While we have a new nominee.
And was she aware of how he was doing?
We're all aware of how he's doing. Our country has watched our president lead. And yes, we've also seen the fact that he's 10 years older than he was 10 years ago.
Wow. Look at that. Mayor Pete can do math. Joe Biden is 10 years older than he was 10 years ago. Huh. Who knew? Oh, my goodness. These people. It is the Chris Plant Show on a Monday. Thanks for being there. Mike Opelka in for the vacationing Chris Plant. And as I mentioned, Mayor Pete Buttigieg was on Fox News Sunday with Shannon Bream, and he was there to carry some water. With all the water he's carrying, you think he'd have a little bit bigger shoulders, maybe some arm muscles developed. But no, I think he's got someone that carries him for him. Oh, that's right. It's the media. They're carrying stuff for him. Mayor Pete sent out to do a little work, a little surrogacy for the candidate, the anointed Kamala Harris. Mayor Pete also spreading lies, disinformation, misinformation. If we had media that was totally honest, I wish Shannon would have pointed this out, that this was Bravo Sierra.
Now, let's be very clear about this, because there has been a lot of mischaracterization. She was not in charge of the border. The Homeland Security Department is in charge of the border. She did do something important, though. She was assigned to conduct diplomacy with Central American countries.
Yeah, and that diplomacy's job was to prevent people from crossing the border. In the meantime, what was it, 12 million, 15 million? Do we even know how many million people crossed during the first 3 years and 9 months of this administration, or 7 months, okay, of this administration? No, we don't. We really don't. And now she is the face of the party. It's really bizarre how quickly lame duck status has been assigned to Joe Biden now that he's not running again. And it appears that they are locking him down. Although he is telling people he's going to change the Supreme Court or push to change the Supreme Court, I don't know how much success he can have in that. Lindsey Graham kind of laughed that off. Lindsey Graham pointing out there's just really no way that this can happen. But Chuck Schumer wants it to happen. Chuck Schumer is talking about the big morass. Yeah, he likes the word morass. He kept using it this weekend whenever he was on the TV. Chuck?
The Supreme Court is a morass. First, it's an ethical morass. The idea that wealthy individuals, many of them right-wing, can both pay for cases before the court and at the same time give justices gifts or trips is outrageous. And frankly, Chief Justice Roberts isn't doing enough to curb it. But it's a morass in even a worse way. This is a MAGA right-wing court. It's already taken away the right to choose. It could very well go further on that. I fear it will. It's siding with the wealthiest of individuals and the powerful interests over the average working family. And it even threatens democracy when it says that a president can get immunity even for certain acts in the presidency. So this court is just a morass, both ethically and substantively.
No, you're a morass, mister. You're the morass here. You're the biggest morass I've seen. For those that don't know, a morass is technically a muddy or boggy area, a complicated or confused situation. They just don't like the outcome of the court because the court has 6-3 conservative justices, even though a couple of them are not really that reliable. But it is a 6-3 court. And I think the Democrats are starting to freak out because if Donald Trump wins, there is a serious likelihood there may be some resignations, retirements on the court. So Biden's going to come out today, and we'll see him, apparently, and get to hear from him, another proof of life moment where Joe Biden is going to make a statement that he wants Congress to put limits on the Supreme Court, term limits. Interesting. Could Congress do that and they won't do it to themselves? Of course. Of course they will, but I doubt it's going to get through. It can't. They don't have the numbers. They just do not have the numbers. Joe can't get anything done right now. And Lindsey Graham came out and said that yesterday, too. He said he'd oppose any reforms to the court and any ideas that would impose more strict ethical requirements and term limits. He would oppose. He was on Face the Nation yesterday talking about it. It's not going to happen. So what can Joe Biden do? If he can do nothing, there is a reasonable argument that maybe he should just retire. But that would, as we discussed last hour, give Kamala Harris the title of president. Mayor Pete Buttigieg yesterday on with Shannon Bream. I wonder if he's going out there to become the vice president. Could it be that this guy would actually get elevated to that possible position as the running mate for Kamala Harris? Could you think of a more woke ticket? If we were going to give an Olympics gold medal in wokeness, it would certainly be Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket and Mayor Pete as the running mate. You've got just about every box checked. And then if you retain Karine Jean-Pierre as the spokesperson, you have a DEI sweep. You can't get past it. We'll keep an eye on this. Let me grab one quick call here early. John is in Reston, Virginia, and this is apparently relating to the Mayor Pete discussion. John, welcome to the Chris Plant Show.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Very good show today. We got to leave Pete alone here. We really need to leave him alone. At least he told the truth. Okay? Yes, he is 10 years older than he was 10 years ago. That's the truth. Let's give him a little bit of credit for that, because it makes my mind want to blow up when I hear these guys saying that Biden is the best president in history in modern times since, the Ark. And, he's just nothing they say is true. Everything they say is a lie.
Well, it's hard to deny time when the numbers are there. Simple math is there. But, it's very interesting. They finally came out and said, he's 10 years older than he was 10 years ago. Well, golly, Bob, howdy, look at that. The other shift on this that really bothers me is how they are now shifting when they would say nothing about Biden's age prior to his stepping aside. But now everything is about Trump's age and how much older he is than Kamala Harris. It's really disgusting.
Yeah, excuse me, but Kamala, wasn't she the dumbest person on earth 6 months ago? Just
oh yeah. We played the CNN. CNN had a panel that came out and said that Kamala Harris was the biggest liability to a Biden reelection. That she was a problem. They were working to try and get her out. They came up with all kinds of theories. And then, looky here, Joe's out. Kamala's suddenly the smartest person in the room. Well, it makes you wonder who else is in the room. It really does.
Exactly. Must have been
Thanks so much for being there, John. Appreciate you. Yeah, Mayor Pete told the truth. Maybe we should give him credit on that. He gets points for getting his name right, if he did, and maybe for being honest about Joe's age. Talking about the Supreme Court and what's going to happen if the Democrats get control of the House and the Senate and the White House, and they could expand the court. They've been talking about packing the court for years now, even though so many of their predecessors said, no, 9 is the right number. Ruth Bader Ginsburg among them. But Kamala Harris gave the question the answer she gives to everything she wants to do. I'm open to the conversation. Whenever she says that, she means that's what I want to do. That's what I'm planning on doing. This was Kamala.
So I will say that I am interested in having that conversation, and I'm open to this conversation about extending the number of people on the United States Supreme Court, about increasing the number of people in the United States Supreme Court.
Yeah. Now, I wonder how open they would be to that conversation if Donald Trump were the president. Do you honestly think that conversation would be happening if Donald Trump is the president and Democrats in the Senate said, hey, if they had control of the Senate, said, hey, you know what we'd like to do? We would like to expand the Supreme Court, Donald Trump. We'd like to give you, I don't know, 4 more picks. Let's take it from 9 to lucky number 13. No, that's not happening. The only reason they're doing this is to create a permanent liberal majority on the court. That's also why they want to create 2 more states. They want D.C. and they want Puerto Rico. And if that happens, that's 4 more Democrat seats and would be really tough to get control of the Senate again. Really tough. I think what we have to do is keep showing the American people that the Republicans, the Trump campaign, has to keep showing the American people what Biden and Harris have done, what they have done to the American dream. Home ownership, the economy. But, you know, really, home ownership is at the key. That's where most families build their wealth if they don't own a business, if they didn't inherit wealth. You build it over the years with buying property, staying there, paying off your mortgage, and as the market increases, then you have something, either to hand down to your kids or to maybe fund your retirement. The numbers are staggering, and CNN keeps sharing them. And I hope people are paying attention.
Well, John, look, this is such a frustrating housing market for the millions of Americans who are on the outside looking in, right? They want to buy, but they just can't. Not with these prices, not with these mortgage rates. And some of them, they're throwing in the towel, they're walking away. So this brand new CNN poll shows that 86% of U.S. renters would like to buy, but they can't. 86%, just 13% say they could afford it, but they're choosing not to. Now, to take this a step further, when you just look at the ones who can't afford it, only 46% say it's either very or somewhat likely that eventually they'll be able to buy. More than half, 54% say it's not too likely or not at all likely that they'll ever be able to buy. That really speaks to a lot of pessimism here about the American dream, how it feels like it's out of reach. Politically, you could see how this would be an issue for the party in power. And economically, it's a problem too because, look, home ownership remains the ticket to wealth generation. So this is just widening the gap between the haves and the have-nots. It is.
And when you've got people buying homes, you also have people buying furniture. You have people buying stuff to fill those homes. You fuel the economy with this. This is one of those points that I hope the Trump campaign catches on to and reminds people of that, because it is, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? Chances are you're not even close. You're not even close. I'm going to take a break because I got to get to this big story that's just unfolding. A piece from Michael Schellenberger that initially we all thought it was a joke. But Kamala Harris's campaign is segregating its volunteers by race. They've already stopped accepting the results of the primary elections. Now they're going to go back to segregation. First elections, now segregation. Why do people pay attention to this? It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.
You're listening to The Chris Plant Show.
It is the Chris Plant Show. Mike Opelka in for my friend Chris Plant. And we're having fun today with the anointed candidate by the Democrat hierarchy. The Democrat royalty has chosen Kamala Harris. Barack Obama, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries. They've all decided that Kamala Harris is the nominee. Damn the torpedoes on the 14 million votes. You're not going to be allowed. You're going to be given a candidate, not choosing one. And now we're seeing what we should have expected is that the DEI candidate is playing politics with race. Kamala Harris is segregating her campaign events 160,000 people join white women for Kamala Harris Zoom call. 160,000. Somebody wrote on Twitter that they got a guy named Matt Stoller wrote, I got randomly put into the White Guys for Harris WhatsApp group and then was almost immediately thrown out after I said a whites only group was nuts. So you're allowed to segregate if you're a Democrat? But, well, I guess that's okay because we have seen now for years that college graduations were allowed to have separate graduations for black students, white students, Latino students, Asian students. What happened to the gorgeous mosaic that the Democrat Party was so fond of telling us about? Michael Schellenberger has some really great stuff that he has posted on this topic. It is amazing stuff. And he even links to an MSNBC interview. If I have time today, I'll play it with John McWhorter, who is an African-American man who wrote a book called Woke Racism. No, he's not in favor of this kind of segregation, nor is he in favor of this kind of treatment of African-Americans, which is the bigotry of low expectations that we've so often talked about here. Let's grab one quick call here. Lee in Leesburg. Lee, did you move to Leesburg just so you could say I'm Lee from Leesburg? He's on Life 5.
Lifelong dream, you know. So, yeah, Mike. I want to make 2 points. Well, a couple points. Well, first thing, the moniker George, to clear something up, the moniker George Step on All of Us was that was given by Rush Limbaugh, the late great Rush Limbaugh. Okay, he did that years and years ago. Okay, so that's where that came from. First point was. You know, the one thing that was rarely talked about, or I didn't hear talked about at all, about the pick for Vice President J.D. Vance was that Trump was basically announcing, I'm not going to do identity politics. And the irony is now Kamala Harris has to pick a white guy to play identity politics, number one. Number two, I think she is the only presidential candidate in my lifetime who has no children. And she might be the only presidential candidate in American history without children. And, you know, I think for me, that means something because, you know, if you have kids and I see your family, that tells me how you take care of the most important thing in your life. Secondly, it means you have a vet. Mm-hmm.
We're up against the clock here, Lee. That's a really interesting point. We'll do some instant research during the break. And the other side of this, we should talk about Kamala and her home life. How many nights has the second gentleman spent with his wife by his side during the first 3.5 years? We might be surprised to see how low number that is. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.
This is The Chris Plant Show.
It is the Chris Plant Show on this Monday. Mike Opelka, that's me, sitting in for Chris Plant as he is on a cruise with Michael Piercy. But we have the great Jeff Wolf on the board, Jasmine on the phones, you here as well. And you're welcome, 888-630-9625. I just brain farted. I had a bride moment there. I'm sorry. It happens. I do a lot of radio in different places, so occasionally I think, wait, what station am I on today? Well, until Chris gets back, I'll be here. So I have a little card here for myself. We've been talking about Kamala Harris a lot today because she's in the news. But Joe Biden is still the president, although he may not know it. He did come out with the statement that we discussed earlier about the Supreme Court, that he wants term limits. He also wants more action on the ruling about presidential immunity. And I don't know if you get a second bite of the apple here, sir. We had that case. It was adjudicated, and the decision is there. But, you know, the Democrats will keep coming back at it. I should have spent a little time earlier today, and I apologize for not getting to it earlier, talking about J.D. Vance and the New York Times piece that went after J.D. Vance this weekend. A former friend, I don't know if they're still friends. I'm wondering how you could be friends with someone after they took years of your private emails and text messages and sent them to the New York Times. But that's what happened with J.D. Vance. 90 emails and text messages from a friend you went to law school with and had a very serious relationship with. His friend Sophia Nelson, who he apparently identified in his book Hillbilly Elegy as transgender, but the person is transgender, but Vance referred to them as a lesbian in the book and then apologized for the confusion, and Nelson didn't have a problem with it at first. Nelson wrote back after J.D. Vance said, hey, I recognize this may not accurately reflect how you think of yourself, and for that I'm really sorry. I hope you're not offended, but if you are, I'm sorry. Love you, J.D. Nelson, the aggrieved individual who sent all these emails and texts in, wrote back to Vance the same day, referring to him as Buddy, thanking him for being sweet, and adding, quote, if you had written genderqueer radical pragmatist, nobody would know what you mean. And that's the end of the quote. So basically not taking exception with the depiction in the book. And signed off on that note, asking for an autographed copy of the book and saying, love, Sophia. So this exchange is from all these emails between these friends that were part of a bigger group of people that went to law school together. But now that J.D. Vance is the nominee, well, suddenly that's a problem. That's a big stinking deal. Now, we knew that J.D. Vance had some criticism for Donald Trump, but these are old stories that are now being brought to light again. And they're in these pages and pages of this article. And I just wonder if this is going to hurt Mr. Trump. I've had friends who said, hey, what do you think about this with J.D. Vance? And I said, well, did you hear him this weekend? Did you spend any time watching the Trump rally in St. Cloud, Minnesota this weekend? Because if you did, you may have a different opinion of J.D. Vance and his maturity is pretty apparent. J.D. Vance in public in 2024 versus emails after law school. Here's a little bit of J.D. Vance from this weekend.
I saw the other day Kamala Harris question my loyalty to this country. That's the word she used, loyalty. And it's an interesting word, simplify, loyalty, because there is no greater sign of disloyalty to this country than what Kamala Harris has done at our southern border. And I'd like to ask the Vice President, what has she done to question my loyalty to this country? I served in the United States Marine Corps. I went to Iraq for this country. I built a business for this country. And my running mate took a bullet for this country. So my question to Kamala Harris is, what the hell have you done to question our loyalty to the United States of America?
That's a pretty good answer, if you ask me. It's a pretty good response, and it is a very good follow-up to what we saw in the New York Times this weekend. A very strong response. J.D. Vance appears to be up to the task. Mr. Trump will have that decision. That's his decision, is it not? It is. It's his running mate. And I go back to everybody who's asked me questions about this. And I said, well, When's the last time you were going to vote for president? You went into the booth and you said, I'm going to vote for this person because the vice president. No, you're voting for president, probably 98% of the time. That pick is for president, not for vice president. Just throwing that out there. If somebody's saying I'm making my decision on president versus vice president, then the president, the two candidates for president must be absolutely tied. We don't have that situation. And I can't wait to see who Kamala, if she actually becomes the nominee, because you never know. Anything could happen. August 7th is the time where something has to happen. There's every possibility that there will be yet another revolt inside the Democrat Party. There are 14 million voices that cried out for Joe Biden and then were suddenly silenced. And yes, that's a veiled Star Wars reference. Because after all, a lot of Democrats are suddenly remembering who Kamala Harris is. Because the video clip of the very first debate from back in the 2020 campaign, the very first Democrat debate, when they were all up on the stage, and Tulsi Gabbard delivered a knockout punch to Kamala Harris.
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Yes, thank you, Congresswoman. That was a great takedown. Rock solid from Tulsi Gabbard. I know a lot of people are saying, well, why can't we have Tulsi as the nominee? You can't have Tulsi as the nominee. You can't. She's a Democrat. It's the same reason you can't have Robert Kennedy Jr. as the vice presidential nominee. I'm more and more comfortable with J.D. Vance, but it's not my decision. It's Donald Trump's decision. It's J.D. Vance's decision. Is there more in Vance's background that could be disturbing or troublesome? We'll find out. I don't expect anything else to come out. Now let's go back 12 years and look at things Donald Trump said. Let's go back 12 years before Donald Trump became president. He was a registered Democrat in New York. He gave money to Chuck Schumer. He also gave money to Kamala Harris's campaign. Just throwing that out there. Before we went to break earlier, we did get a phone call from someone who said, Kamala Harris doesn't have children, has not given birth to children. And the question was, well, what other presidents? There were 5 U.S. presidents who were never fathers. 5, including George Washington. George Washington, the father of the country, never fathered a child. James K. Polk, Warren Harding, James Buchanan, and Andrew Jackson. So 5 out of 46 did not have children. Now, it's been a long time since we had a president who didn't have children. A very long time. And what does that say? We're waiting to get confirmation on the story about Kamala Harris and her husband, the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, who apparently spends the majority of his time out on the West Coast. I want to get solid information. I don't want to go on air with partial information. But there could be some questions asked about, well, is this a normal family? We know that the stepdaughter is kind of bizarro, the model. If we're talking about weird, and let's face it, that is the moniker, that is the new name that the Democrats are slapping on the Trump campaign. It's weird and it's creepy. We're collecting a list of people who've been involved with the Biden administration and asking, okay, who's weird and creepy? Do we go with the gender-confused appointees like Admiral Levine, the person who was a man at birth, lived their life as a man, fathered children, and then suddenly decided they were a female and started dressing and presenting as a female while still having the wedding tackle, and then got appointed to be the admiral, and suddenly the Democrats say, look, we have the highest ranking female. No, that's an insult to women. And let's not forget the dress and luggage thief, Sam Brinton, who basically got all the charges against him thrown out. So where's the weirdness in the campaigns? And let's not forget the White House Pride Party with the topless trans folks running around the South Lawn screaming. Where's the weird? And where's the normal? Yeah, it's pretty obvious who's on the weird side of things and who's on the normal side of things. I'm not even going to get into an argument with you on that. And then the other side of the conversation today, we didn't get into it. We need a little time. We should maybe dedicate the last break to this to do an update on our Olympic situation. The United States is representing, I think, pretty darn well at the Olympics. We're seeing some great performances in the pool. I saw a pretty good performance on the basketball court yesterday by the men's team. I think the women are playing today. Our women's soccer team looked pretty good against Germany yesterday. And I even watched a little table tennis, which we always called ping pong. But if you call it ping pong to somebody who plays table tennis, they get really mad. I just think the people who are getting Olympic medals for table tennis should get a much smaller medal than the people who are running the decathlon or maybe running the Olympic marathon. It seems like there's a little bit more athletic ability involved, although people are going to say hand-to-eye coordination. I know. But if I can do it in the basement of my family home during the holiday dinners, I don't know if it's officially an Olympic sport. They did cancel, today they canceled the training swim for the triathlon. The Olympics has a triathlon. Again, talk about athletic prowess required to run, ride, and swim a considerable distance. And you get the same gold medal that the people who play ping pong get. The training swim in the Seine River was canceled because of pollution. And I think we talked about it last week. There are a bunch of protesters who have been targeting the Seine River and personally polluting it. I guess that's the nicest way I could say it. They have been relieving themselves in the Seine in an effort to foul the waters to the point where it's not safe for people to swim. Well, today, a combination of the rain and something else caused the bacteria levels to be so high it wasn't safe for people to swim, so they canceled it. Now, if you're a triathlete and you're a biker and a runner and a swimmer, usually one of those you're really good at, and the others you excel, but you're not quite as good. If you're a swimmer and the Olympics says, okay, we're not going to let you train, or we're going to do a triathlon, but we're going to do bike, run, bike, then you're totally getting cheated out of the triathlon opportunity. We'll follow this. We'll get to it. As far as the opening ceremonies and the slam to the Last Supper, I see where you could make that leap. I also understand the people who are saying, no, this was a classic painting that was saluting the gods and Dionysus. And I don't want our athletes coming home. I want our athletes to stay there and show the world how good we are. Paris is going to be Paris. Paris is always going to be weird. That's France. It's not America. Can you imagine if Jesse Owens had been told to come home from Germany because Hitler was there? We never would have showed the world the greatness of Jesse Owens. Let the American athletes show off to the world. And let's hope we stay atop the medals chart. It's a very, very tough competition with China this year, as it was last time. I don't think you pull the American athletes home. They worked 4 years for this opportunity. I don't care about their political persuasions. We don't know about their political persuasions. But let's not let France scare us out of the Olympics. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show.
There's only one Chris Plant. The Chris Plant Show.
It is the Chris Plant Show, wrapping up on Monday. Mike Opelka sitting in for the vacationing Mr. Plant. Thanks for being here. This new ad from the Harris campaign just appeared online, and it seems to be telling the God's honest truth. Now, that's a great ad, but it's not real. That's artificial intelligence. That tells you just how good the technology is. Jeff Wolf didn't know that was fake until I told him. Now, he has a tuned set of ears, too. So once you go back and listen to it again, you can hear some of the subtle nuances that would tell you, hold on a second here. But there are going to be a lot of fake things posted. And I stress everybody, just take a break, take a moment before you jump on something and want to retweet it, repost it, whatever we're calling it on social media these days, and make sure it's legit. I know the government's going to freak out. They're going to want to shut this all down because the closer we get to Election Day, let's face it, 98 and a half days away, it's going to get crazy. So buckle up and be here tomorrow, please. Mike Opelka. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jasmine. And thank you, the audience, for being there. Till tomorrow, till next time. Testudo, my friends. Testudo.